Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of DeepSeededGeek's Franchise Fridays. Today we are going to be looking at the Bioshock franchise. This game has been a benchmarker for me for a number of years now. If ever I pick up a new game, I'll find myself asking, how does this stack up to Bioshock? Because it is such a monumental game. The game has done a number of things to push the envelope of game design that it's hard not to hold it on a pedestal. And with the latest entry in the series, it's pushed the boundaries once again, as if to say to other developers, this is where we need to be going in the future, so you better step up your game. Now, the first game in the series, Bioshock the original, came out in about 2007, and it was around the time where the new generation of consoles were just coming out, and everybody was jumping on the bandwagon to get a hold of the Unreal Engine 3 because it was the only engine that was looking next gen for the time. But along comes Bioshock, and they used an older version of the Unreal Engine 2, one that had been dismissed for next gen, and they used that to make one of the most beautiful looking games to ever come out on a console at that time. And it also went on to win like a number of accolades for either Game of the Year or Best Visuals in a Video Game, above and beyond all the ones that were currently next gen looking games. And I really do like the fact that they didn't go for an overly realistic look to the entire game. They went for a very stylized look, one that had kind of an art style to it. And you'll see that throughout like the way that they use the visuals throughout the entire game. I mean, it's supposed to look like dark, dank, and like scary for the most part, but you have all these like vibrant color palettes just splattered everywhere within the game that it just makes it look like a living piece of art more so than a video game. And it's one thing to talk about the visuals of a game, which is about 90% of what sells us on the game in the first place. But this was a game that knows that in order to make something memorable, you have to make it tangible. The developers spent just as much time working on the sound elements of the game, the narrative told through audio cues and little hidden secrets that, for the lucky scavengers in the gaming world, this paid off big time. Even the soundtrack, which for the most part is music from the era that the game takes place in, that music sticks with you long after you've finished the game. To the point where if you hear a song from the game on the radio years later, you'll get like the pricklies on the back of your neck, and you'll turn around to look to see if there's a little sister or a big daddy that's following you. It just gets in your brain that way. Now, I am a huge fan of horror movies and especially horror games, and even though this game isn't at the top of my list for scary games, it did have moments that freaked the living hell out of me. There's one instance in particular that I feel like I can tell you guys without spoiling any plot points. There's a section in this game where you'll be walking through a garden, which looks like, you know, just heaven compared to everything that has led you up to that point. And while you're in this garden, you'll hear this voice calling for help. And you try and run around the world trying to find the source of this person's voice, and you'll see a shadow kind of go across the screen. And so you head towards it, and then for a brief moment you'll see a person saying, "This way, come, follow me," and they'll turn around the corner. You gotta follow them, and they've disappeared. And all that's left behind is like a little item for you to collect. So you pick it up, and it gives you a little tutorial, and when you exit out of that tutorial, you hear breathing from behind you. And you slowly turn around to see just a person there. They're not doing anything, they're just standing there. And they've got this weird mask on their face. And because they're not moving or reacting, you're not quite sure if they're alive or dead or what the story is. So you go to move a little bit, and that's when they jump at you, and it makes you crap yourself in your seat. And that's a moment that sticks with me forever from Bioshock, and it's laden with little things like that. I mean, ask anybody who's played the game. You hear the noise of a big daddy, and your bowels turn to liquid real quick. Now, you cannot talk about Bioshock without discussing the element that made it stand apart from the crowd, which is its storytelling. As dense as the story is with its moral, challenging themes and questions, it often comes down to one single solitary phrase. Would you kindly? A phrase that led to the biggest plot twist since The Sixth Sense is part of gamers' vocabulary for the rest of time. It's up there with all your base belong to us and the cake is a lie. It's the stuff of legend, for a good reason. And I'm not gonna spoil that for you guys now, but believe me, when you get there, you will be like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever. But for a much more in-depth look at why this game in particular has a very special place in my game library, be sure to look for Monday's Game of the Month video, where we spend almost 2 hours discussing the game inside and out. I find it very hard to find any fault in this game because it does so much right. But that's why we're going to move on to Bioshock 2 now. Bioshock 2, in my opinion, is a bit of a stain on the series' reputation. Irrational Games, the makers of the original game, decided against creating a direct sequel to their first game. But the publishers wanted to keep this franchise going, and so they gave the plans for its sequel to an in-house studio at 2K Marin. What they created was a game that looked, sounded, and played like Bioshock, but it was missing one key thing, and that was everything else that made Bioshock great. I will say that the game did offer one interesting thing, which was a short sequence near the end of the video game where you get to see the world through the eyes of a little sister. That was pretty cool. And that's all I have to say about Bioshock 2. Which brings us to the most recent game in the series, Bioshock Infinite. Now, if you are a gamer with any little shred of cred to your name, you have heard about this game. You've heard people talk about this game. You've heard people, more than likely, rave about this game. And it's for a very good reason. This is an incredible game. The latest in the franchise is a return to the good stuff. Bioshock Infinite, once again created by the fine people at Irrational Studios, is a testament to the game that came before it. A game with a soul. And I personally love how the idea for Bioshock Infinite came about. It's said that Ken Levine, the creative director for the series, he and the development team were at a cafe one day, and they were having a coffee, and Ken Levine pulls out a napkin, and he draws a little doodle that shows under the sea, there's Rapture, which is the world from Bioshock 1. And he thought for a minute, he's like, well, what if we did Rapture, a little castle, above the clouds? And there you have it, Bioshock Infinite was born. Now, of course, there's a lot more to it. And I do think they took the idea of, okay, well, if it's the polar opposite of location, what would be the polar opposite of everything else? And so everything that was dank and dark about Bioshock the original was now light and carefree and heartfelt in the Bioshock Infinite world. So literally, almost every idea they had from the original, they turned it over on its head and said, well, what if we looked at it from this way? And you'll notice, like, there are a lot of things that just kind of echo from the original series in Bioshock Infinite. And it's a beautiful thing, not only for its design and all the opportunities that it gives as storytellers, but it is a nice little nod to all the devoted fans who can pick these little things apart. Because if you're a gamer like myself, where you love to find all the hidden clues and see the little, hidden messages and whatever, little winks and nods to the gamers that love it beforehand, this is like a treasure trove for gamers like myself. Now, graphic-wise, this again isn't the most groundbreaking technical achievement in graphics, but it retains a visual style that is beautiful in the same way the original was frightening. But every inch of this game was such a treat to the eyes that for most of the game, I was literally just running to every corner of the game world to make sure I caught every little bit of detail they offered. Plus, I'm a big achievement whore, and I want to find all the little hidden treasures around the world. I'm just, geeky like that. Now, once again, this is a game that relies heavily on its sound design. The music is haunting and sometimes very, very familiar. Where the original used organic sounds to make up a big part of its haunting atmosphere, the voice work of all the inhabitants of this game world make you you feel like you're living in that era, and you start to believe in some of the ideas that these people have, or that life is a better place and it's not so corrupt and evil and blah 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 blah. You just buy into it through all the conversations and the people that inhabit this world. And that is a huge accomplishment because that is not an easy thing to do. Now, as a big change of pace from the Bioshock games, this game introduced the idea of having a companion with you in the form of Elizabeth. Now, a lot of people, this is where it makes or breaks the game for a lot of people. I don't really know why, but from what I've heard, some people love or some people hate having Elizabeth around. I personally think it was brilliant. Most times when you do have a companion with you, they kind of stumble around in front of you and just act like a drunken ragdoll. A good example is the game Ico, depending on how you want to say it, where Yorda, who is this little girl that you're supposed to escort out of her imprisonment, is just like, her AI is so terrible, she'll go directly towards enemies when you're telling her to stay, or when you want her to follow you, she'll just kind of stumble around in a, figure 8 until she figures out, oh, there you are. Whereas with Elizabeth in Bioshock Infinite, she doesn't need your help. She's just going along for the ride. She'll stay out of harm's way, and she'll even help you in certain instances where if you're out of ammo, she'll search the grounds for ammunition and throw it your way in the heat of battle. She'll throw you little power-ups if you're running low. She'll give you hints as to where to go and what to do, and she'll point out things that you, being a dumbass gamer too involved and looking around every corner, will not have found because she's like, hey, look at this obvious thing. Why are you so stupid that you didn't see this? Of course, she's just saying that to me. She doesn't really say that out loud. That's just in my head. But nonetheless, she'll point out things that you may or may not have recognized or realized were there in the first place. The other cool thing about her is that she manipulates the fabric of time and space. What I mean is that there are little tears in reality throughout the video game where she is the only person allowed to kind of manipulate that and bring things through that can help or hinder you. Well, not really hinder you, but hinder the competition that's coming after you. Regardless, it's a brilliant idea. The idea of having multiple worlds or dimensions in this game is a thing of beauty. Including a gameplay mechanic that taps into the tears of fabric and time and space is one thing, but how it manipulates your game experience as you go is an incredible experience that I think is one of the best uses of this idea in any medium so far. There is so much to love about this story and so many moments that are just so memorable that I don't want to discuss any of it because I am so, even from the get-go, I mean, I'll say this much. I read an article after I had played the game in Game Informer, and within the first 3 paragraphs of the article talking about Bioshock Infinite, they ruined the opening sequence that I played through. Had I read that article before playing the game, I wouldn't have had that beauty of experiencing the opening sequence for the first time. And that is something that is going to stick with me forever. That's something that brought a tear to my eye being a Bioshock fan. And I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody. And it's like that throughout the entire game. The way they set up every kind of stage, so to speak, in the game, where you have to get from point A to B. Well, yeah, you could go A to B, but it's the experiences that you decide to or decide not to have along the way that make this game so unbelievably incredible. And then you get to the end of the game, and once you've had that experience, it's one of the few games that once you have it, you want to go right back to the beginning and experience it all over again because it changes your perception of the entire game. Much like The Sixth Sense. Again, I keep referencing that, but because it is one of those plot twist kind of devices. And it just makes the replay value of this game just infinite. Ha! Look at that! I didn't even plan that. That's pretty cool. So, unfortunately, that's as far as I want to go into talking about the true heart and soul of Bioshock Infinite, which is its storyline and its characters and everything that has gone into making the game, because I want everybody to go out and experience it for yourself. And once you have, please feel free to come back, leave a comment below about your experiences. Heck, even email me. I would love to talk to all of you at length about this video game without holding back on spoilers and all that jazz. So if you dig this video, Give me a thumbs up, tell me that you like this video and you want to see more of this content. Definitely leave a comment, send me an email, share this with your friends and family, and hit the subscribe button up there if you want to see more videos like that, because they come out every Monday and Friday. And I will see you next time on Deep Seeded Geek. Take care.